Who didn't try to sneak into a bar when we were underage? Well, I think most of us did, and we got away with it. New Zealand lowered the legal drinking age from 20 to 18 years old with the passing of the Sale of Liquor Amendment Act, and that came to effect in December 1999. There were later debates about raising the age back to 20, but Parliament voted against it in 2006, again in 2012, keeping the legal drinking age at 18. And for many bars, there doesn't seem to be many problems, but for others, the difference between 18 and 20 is very prevalent. Last month, House of Hood, a bar in Hamilton, announced it will return to being a 20-plus bar on Saturday nights after dealing with 5-figure damages to the property. A month on, and many 18 and 19-year-olds lament it, saying they're disappointed, the ban is unfair. But others understand how it can happen, including John Lawrenson of Lawrenson Group, who made that rule. And he joins me now. G'day, John.
G'day, Leah. How are you?
Well, John, this is why Hamilton can't have nice things.
Well, yeah. I mean, and not the first time I've heard that sentence, I can tell you.
Hey, John, firstly, what type of bar is House on Hood? Did it used to be a 20-plus bar?
Yeah, so it was a 20-plus bar for a number of years. It has a nightclub component to it, but it's open for dinner throughout the week, does bottomless brunches on a Saturday. So
nice.
It has a full kitchen, and it has a pretty loyal food following. So definitely somewhere that you wouldn't want to have broken toilets and damaged furniture when people are coming in trying to enjoy a meal.
Gosh, let's talk about this. What damage did you see when you were 18 years allowed in?
The main issue did seem to be the toilets, and funnily enough, I own the Outback here, and we've just had O Week, and we had 4 toilets smashed during O Week as well. So I don't know what it is about breaking toilets, but also breaking the cubicles around the toilets, breaking the toilet doors. I think maybe it's because, most people know that we don't put cameras in those areas. So if someone wants to be violent and destructive, it's the best place to do it. And in fact, famously, a bar in Hamilton about 15 years ago did put cameras in their toilets, and it turned into a bit of a national scandal. But I did feel for the owners at the time because honestly, we're not really interested in the normal going-ons in toilets. It's more about are you breaking the bowls, ripping the systems off the walls, smashing the hand basins, and breaking the cubicles. So that was the main thing. I have no idea. I don't know what toilets have ever done to them, but yeah.
Hey, John, was there even you had stag heads ripped off the walls? I mean, was that happening?
Yeah. So the theme of House is literally that the fit out is reminiscent of a kitsch sort of tacky house. There's stag heads on the walls, and there's wallpaper and lots of sort of fake bookshelves and things to give it that sort of homely feel. But
Nice.
The stag heads got ripped off the wall, books were getting ripped out of bookshelves. We sort of had these ornate banisters going up the stairwells, and people were kicking out pieces of the banister, which I think some of those photos featured in some of the articles about this. So yeah, it just got to the point where every sort of Sunday and Monday, the staff were coming in to deal with this, and it was incredibly disheartening. Staff saying,
Inexpensive.
God, I'm just so over this. And expensive. And with the exception of about $7,000 worth of damage that was done to some cubicles in the upstairs toilets, a lot of it was never enough to really bother claiming insurance on because the excess wouldn't cover it.
Of course.
So so it would always be a few $100s here, a few $100s there. But when it was happening every sort of second weekend, it was death by 1,000 cuts.
John, could you confirm, though, that the people doing it were under 20? Because people listening might go, well, how do you know it was the 18, 19-year-olds?
I guess the only thing you can really point to is the fact that this stuff wasn't really happening when it was a 20-plus bar.
Yeah, sure.
And then it became an 18-plus bar, and suddenly this stuff happened, to a far larger degree than it ever had before. And that kind of behaviour was also very reminiscent of the issues that we have in places like the Outback and Coyotes, which are our other 18-plus bars. So, I mean, I know that, correlation doesn't always necessarily mean causation, but I think in this case, based on the fact that we had two different age limits that we could compare, and when it was 20 plus we didn't have a problem, and when it was 18 plus we did. I think it's a pretty fair conclusion to jump to. Obviously that's not to say that people over 20 don't ever do damage, they just seem to do a lot less.
And it's only on Saturday nights, and am I right in it's only from 10 p.m? Do you go around and kick out the under 20s at 10 o'clock, or is it just you don't accept any more after 10?
We just don't accept anymore. So I think if you were very smart, and you were 19, you'd maybe, get yourself there at 9:45. But I mean, this is kind of reminiscent of part of the issue, representative of part of the issue. I mean, as much as the damage is annoying and expensive, it's by no means the only issue. And I've made some comparisons talking to people about this, that when people say 30 and they're drinking with a 28-year-old, they don't really see a very big difference in that 2 years. But the difference between a 20-year-old and an 18-year-old is quite substantial, because an 18-year-old is only just beginning their drinking journey. In the same way that, if you're 16 and you've just started driving, again, we say you're a learner, we put someone in the passenger seat next to you for the first 6 months, you're getting to grips with the power of the vehicle in the same way that you're getting to grips with the power of alcohol. So, those 18-year-olds, they preload, they're probably not going to come to town at 9:45 because they're too busy at home downing RTDs that they've bought from the local liquor store, and they're going to come to town at midnight, probably not buy any drinks. Once they get in, the alcohol's going to hit them, and then they start, making the dance floor an unpleasant place. They get pushy. They often throw up. So it's not just the damage; it's also the behaviour, the fact that you're dealing with kids that preload. It's very hard to tell whether they've had too much to drink if they've consumed that alcohol rapidly just before arriving, but then you have to deal with the aftermath of that alcohol once it hits them. So there's a whole lot of reasons that we as a bar don't want to be dealing with that in a nicer venue. With the greatest of respect to the Outback, it's probably a little more rudimentary in its fit out, but also the 20-year-olds don't want to be dealing with it in the same way that you can kind of look at a learner driver on the road and maybe just keep your distance a little bit. If you're a 21, 22-year-old,
what's the feedback been like since you've gone back to 20 plus, John, in your particular bar?
Oh, I mean, overwhelmingly positive. I mean, look, we definitely haven't shied away from doing a bit of controversial marketing at House in the past to get attention for the brand. You may remember a few years ago we did cheap Corona beers, all coronavirus pandemic long, which got us a fair bit of attention. So when I did this, I did expect that there would be a bit of arguing between the 18-year-olds and the 20-year-olds, but that article in the Herald you referenced, I mean, those two 18-year-olds they found, I think are about the only two 18-year-olds I've heard any complaints from. I think most of them probably accept the fact that they are, not the most pleasant to drink around. And meanwhile, people over 20 are just, I can't believe the outpouring of support for it. I've had people I hadn't talked to in years messaging me saying, oh, this is such a great idea. So glad you did this. It's been a very, very one-sided response. The 18-year-olds have sort of quietly accepted their fate, and the 20-plus crowd is over the moon.
I bet.
So, and I mean, so much interest in this.
Yeah, do you think then, John, that age restrictions could loom for more bars in Hamilton, even higher? Would you consider a 23 or a 25?
I actually have a 25 plus bar in Hamilton.
Oh, okay.
So Keystone on a Saturday night is 25 plus after 10 o'clock. For a similar reason. It's a bar that appeals to people predominantly in their 30s and 40s. We have, old school live bands playing all the classic 80s and 90s songs. And that crowd, I mean, all those sing-alongs, the bangers of yesteryear. So, and again, that crowd doesn't really want to have a bunch of 18 to 25-year-olds around. I mean, and look, you take a sort of a pragmatic approach. If you had a group of people in their 40s and 50s show up and one of them had their 22-year-old son with them, of course you would make an exception and you'd let them in.